Hello?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prodcast. This is Google's podcast about SRE and production software. Today we have a special guest, TMU. Everyone knows what that means, TMU. In real life, his name is probably Todd Underwood. Maybe that's what he writes on actual forums and things. And of course, I'm always here with my friend Matt. Hey Matt, how's it going?
Good
and I
to see you
think the two of you actually, Matt and Todd, might even be in the same part of the world. Is that even true? Is that possible?
We're like fewer than 2 kilometers apart.
Whoa, crazy.
I'm in fact at the moment in his old office.
This is
better.
just such it's a weird experience. It's a little bit insulting,
Surreal.
frustrating, unnerving. I don't like it that you've taken over. It's fine. I'll get over it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in his old office. I'm not at his old office in the sense that I don't use his old. I'm borrowing his old office.
I can't tell that. I mean, I just see you occupying it. See,
That is the correct word. I'm occupying his old office.
Todd, who the heck are you? What's your deal? Can you tell our listeners, watchers?
I am Todd. I lead reliability for Anthropic, which is an AI company working to develop safe and beneficial and harmless AI. Prior to that, I worked at OpenAI for a brief period and at Google for a very long period. So I have been doing reliability stuff for most of my career, but I've been doing machine learning reliability stuff in particular since about 2009. So yeah, that's who I am. Like one piece of advice I have for everyone, do not write a book. Under no circumstances should you ever write a book. I know this because I wrote a book with some folks about machine learning reliability. It was a catastrophic mistake, really, really terrible. No, the book's fine, but like it's really so much more work than you think it is. So yeah,
I wrote a book lit one time, and that was hard. Like it's basically
like
just a Google Doc,
book,
but very long. Yeah.
Oh man,
It takes a long time.
The worst book story I have is like, you get to the end and you print it out for the first time and you're actually reading through. So you read through the whole thing in order. And my teenager came down and saw me and said, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Well, this is the book. Like, it's almost done." And she said, like, "Wait, you were serious about that?" I'd been working on it for like 2 years. She was like, "Oh, I thought everybody's writing a book. Everybody's got a screenplay." I'm like, "No, we were writing a book. We wrote a book.
This is different. It's real.
She's like,
Tell us about the book. It was an important book. Tell what happened after the book.
I think what's interesting about so the topic is tough because when you think about like what we do, what you all talk to people about, making things reliable. Oh my God, look at that. You've got one. Oh.
Yes, reliable machine learning.
And also what's creepy about that book is Anthropic employees are called ants. And like the animal on I was like, this is
on the cover is a bunch
weird.
of ants,
This
yeah.
is very strange. It was destined to be. I think what was interestingly difficult about the book is we intentionally tried to give it a little bit longer shelf life than you normally do for technical books, in part because we just thought like this stuff changes so fast. If you're going to try to address what people are doing today, don't write a book, just like put out a blog, write some, web articles about it, do a video tutorial or something. But we wanted to try to get at some of the underlying principles, things like how do you think about managing data and metadata? Or how do you think about like troubleshooting incidents for services that have, AI, ML as a particularly important component of those interfaces and applications. And so to do that, you have to be a lot more generic and a lot more principled, which is hard because like you want to be concrete enough to be useful, but not so concrete as to be useless in 2 weeks. So I think that was what was hard. I think the reception was pretty good, but also what's weird is like it's been super steady. Like I would say like the number of times people have brought up the book in the last month is actually not dissimilar from this month last year, which is really surprising for a technical book. Yeah.
Yeah. In very recent news, I wanted to tell you that yesterday I spent much of the day vibe coding for the first time in my life. And it is a phrase. So this phrase may not last in perpetuity as people discover this podcast 25 years from now. But
Indeed.
I had an AI write code for me and I just accepted whatever it said. I was like, yep.
Okay.
I didn't do any debugging. And all I did was write tests. and now make the test pass. No, not like that. Like that was the level of my prompt engineering. It wasn't very smart. It was just like, hey man, come on. And it worked. It was pretty cool. Some of which was like production-y things. It wasn't real production, of course, but it was like, make this so I can run it on a cloud, and like make it so that it is debuggable, and like add logging, and like blah, 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 blah. Words like that. So this is a ruse to get us to talk about using AI in production, because that's the real topic of today.
Yeah.
So how do people actually use ML AI in their day job, if they're SREs, if they're people who listen to this podcast today? Like, in your opinion, so far today, as you've seen it, like actually be.
You mean like what is the current state of affairs?
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Today. Yeah.
So that's tough, because like, so let's think about from -5 years until plus 100 years from this moment. So within the -5 years to this moment, we have all been on the receiving end of this huge amount of hype of like, oh, AI is going to do everything for you. This goes back to a bunch of like AI startups that were doing a thing that I haven't heard people use the term as much recently, but AI ops, which is the idea of using AI in production. Like that was
still around for sure.
Okay, so that's still around. You would know better than I would. So like people started trying to sell that for anomaly detection, for automatic configuration management, for dashboard creation and curation, for metric selection, for all this stuff, for config authoring. And like, let's be honest, like most of it hasn't worked very well. It does really well on demos, but then you go to use it on a real code base and it's like, I don't really know what's happening here. Maybe you could do a bunch of work to make your code base just like what I was expecting, and then I will save you time. And like this, it's a trap, right? So that's where we have been until now. 100 years from now, I think we all agree that computers are going to do most of this for themselves and for us. Like we're not going to need them. So somewhere between the moment that we're at and 100 years from now, things are going to change a lot. So I've seen some limited stuff that's starting to work. And it's mostly stuff that's super adjacent to software engineering, as you say, Steve. So like, what is, like, can you write Terraform for me? Yeah, this stuff can write Terraform. Can you like produce a Helm chart? Yes. Like, can you help me troubleshoot this particular like Kubernetes command that's not working? Yes, like they can do that. But then later when you say, hey, could you specify and architect a series of redundant services spread across 3 locations with 20,000 nodes in one location and 2,000 nodes in each of 2 other locations, and describe that, which is super normal for like a human. You're like, hey, and they would think about, no, they're not there yet. So somewhere between do some Kubernetes for me and like build the service, that's the gap that
make it so it's good. Yeah, that's hard.
Make it so it's good. Well, and thinking about tests, like one of the funniest things about this is the thing. I have to say, a little side note, this is the thing I find most human about the coding. If you tell an AI system to make something pass the tests, the most common thing it will often do is change the tests to be passing. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of us feel like that as well. And a lot of software engineers do that too. You're like, what is the fastest way to get this code to pass those tests? The answer is have the test return true. Like that's the fastest way. And like lots of us do that. Like, and honestly, if you told a very junior developer who wasn't really familiar with test-driven development, they would do it too, because they're like, this thing says no, but if it said yes, then the next step would happen. Make it say yes. Oh, look, I can do that. It's even less code.
All right. You took a wide spectrum of this discussion through like where AI applicability from down to the ultra tactical, like working with tests, munging in code, and up at the super strategic, like doing big plans, doing forecasting. Like where are you seeing actual leverage happening now? Where are people finding, oh, this is really useful. I'm able to do this. I'm not toiling because this machine is doing the work, so I can do some more of the thinking. Where's this happening now? Not 100 years from now, not 5 years ago where it was garbage. Where are we actually seeing some progress that's safe, that the risks are worthwhile, that everyday people can actually do things?
I think we're still in the very early stages of that. So we're in the messy middle, but we're at the beginning of the messy middle. And what I mean by that is like before we had these kinds of computer systems, people like us, we wrote the config for ourselves, and people like us as coworkers reviewed each other's configs. Yeah. That's how we did it back in the dawn of time, right? And then
last year,
like last year, conf t. Oh, but like, and then at some point in the distant future, like humans will not be involved at all, and that'll be a very different world where like the computers talk to the computers, and the representations of what they do and also what they need to be good at is very different. in the middle, the computers need to be able to help us. And that's where we are right now. So what I see right now are very sort of beginning stages of people using computers to help them with production, not very sophisticated. Cases that are incredibly controversial and don't work at all and might never work or will not work with our current approaches are anomaly detection. Like that's the thing most of us want, like is anomaly detection. I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon. What does work?
Non-trivial anomaly detection.
Yeah, I mean,
we already
like,
get the basic, like, well, maybe, kind of stuff.
That's right. But then, like, those are either like huge false positives or huge false negatives. They're like, oh, that thing spiked, and you're like, well, it spiked because it's the beginning of the working.
It's important to point out, like, there already is anomaly detection. It just sucks, right? Like, it's already it's in many products today.
Yeah,
it just sucks.
Because Matt did say like reliable.
Yes.
So I don't think the anomaly detection stuff is very useful. I do think there's a couple sort of use cases that I've seen that are pretty good. Steve Ross and I wrote a paper a number of years ago that pointed out that the cases where people are using these systems where it works, we don't even think about. So let's talk about auto scaling with your current employer. Like auto scaling has been ML driven at Google for a long time, and you don't even think about it. And you're like, well, yeah, that's right. It just because they had some like simple model of like, a low watermark, bump things up, high watermark, bump things down. And then they were like, oh, well, what if we do some diurnal prediction? What if we store a time series? And what if I say like, hey, I think in 26 minutes, you need twice as many instances of your job spun up, and they just get ready to do that because spinning up instances is not instantaneous. That was good, a little punsy there.
Got it.
But so that things like that already exist. In terms of the work that people do out in the real world, the only stuff I've seen that is like pretty much working is things related to like first draft configs and first draft designs. And also there's a little bit like, I got paged, what do you think I should look at? Those things where there is something that is useful but is not left to its own device. It's going through a human. So in that case, like, Matt, I alert you, you're on call for some service and you get an alert. And if you're not great at the service or you're not super experienced, which happens to us all from time to time, it's pretty great to go into a page and say like, hey, I got a page, and have the model say like, I'm not really too sure, but I think you should look at one of these 5 graphs. I've got 5 graphs. I think you should look at those. And if 3 of them are useless and unrelated to what you want to look at, but 2 of them really help you understand what's happening and how to fix it, that's pretty great. The last thing that I've seen is super boring. I talked about this last year, but it's actually really interesting, is the replacement of interfaces to technical documentation. So OpenAI had this where instead of saying like, let me search a set of web pages, you instead interact with an AI system that has access to the full set of technical documentation, which means you can explain, expand, correlate. You can say like, I don't understand how this system works. And says, well, this is a system that does that, and it relies on that. So there's the interface to that is much, much better. Like, tell me all the things that control access to files stored in my blob store. Like, that's not an easy question to ask of your documentation. Like, that's not a web search kind of a question. That's an AI system kind of a question. But if you have a huge amount of documentation and you ask it that, most of the good AI systems will answer that question for you. So
this sounds a lot like toil reduction through this type of technology, as well as kind of freshness of understanding. I don't know, there's probably a better phrase for this, but like being able to know less about what was written down the last time we wrote things down and more about the state of the system.
Yeah, I
via
think
many sources potentially.
I think that, and I think that like in the human augmentation piece of this, all of the systems where you can sort of put a series of documents into a project and look through that project. So like Notebook LM at Google, Anthropic projects, both of these are like, hey, link to these documents either by uploading the documents or linking to your Google Drive or whatever. And like, now I just want to talk to the documents. I want to ask questions about them. And so like cool examples I've seen. I mean, this is going to be boring from a production engineering point of view, but I'm a manager. And one cool example I heard was put all your one-on-one docs into a project. And then you can ask questions about your one-on-one docs in aggregate. Like you're like, who is really struggling, or who has had some interesting questions, or who have I met with least in the last 3 months? Like you could get these things from other places, but like, you can put your team doc meetings in there or your incident review docs in there and say like, what were the most contentious incident reviews in the last 6 months? And you're like, you could figure that out. But like being able to zone in on like, hey, here's 3 that had like a large number of comments, a large number of discussion on the comments, failure to resolve on what the follow-up items were. All of these are in this bucket of helping humans be more useful, human augmentation. None of these are the sort of like, oh, and then the computers just go away and do it.
Right.
We're not at that point yet.
This really brings something that is top to mind for some people is trust and safety, is knowing that what's coming out of the other side of these decisions is not just not missing what's important, but also not suggesting something that's potentially problematic. What's in your head about this right now?
I think the main thing that I've been enjoying with some of these systems that are based on either, web documents or stored documents in a product are citations. So don't tell me like, this is a thing. Tell me why you think that's a thing so that I can build trust. That works with humans as well. Like somebody tells me, hey, the weather's going to be terrible tomorrow. I'm like, I didn't know that. Why is the weather why do you think that? Right? That's a perfectly normal, where did you get that information? Because I want to have access to that information and understand it better. That's a normal thing to do to another human being. It's also a completely normal thing as you're trying to build trust in an AI. Like, don't give me a number. I mean, sure, give me a number, that's fine, or give me a set of numbers, but also tell me, like, where did you get that information so that
citation needed.
Yeah,
for sure.
Citation needed. And I think in the systems like Anthropic projects or, Notebook LM, where you're working with a series of documents, having deep links into the document, they're like, look at this table, or look at this paragraph, or look at these 3 things. That's why I think that this is important, or this is wrong, or this is interesting, or this is trend exists.
Well, how do we, I like that answer. Also, I mean, at Google, we've been trying to get people to dig into not just here's the answer, also go look at where we got it for you with authoritative information. I think what you just said was, this is a citation, this is where we think that came from. How do we get people to want those kinds of answers, not just here's a summary of the answer, go look for, this is the credibility of that answer. Go look and read for yourself. Go make a judgment, not just take this answer as it is. Because I see people just taking the output of that, digesting and going, that's the answer, I'm ready to go. But I don't think we want people doing that. How do you suggest we have a literate way of interacting with these machines?
I mean, I'm not an expert in, long ago, worse than that, long ago, I discovered I don't really understand other people all that well. So that's fine. So I don't know how you get anyone to do anything. What I do think is that when I think about the way I use, for example, search, I think there's some different use cases. One of the use cases is like, is, Cedar Rapids the capital of Minnesota? No, it's not. Okay. What is the capital of Minnesota? Tell me about St. Paul. Fine. Okay. So I just wanted to know a fact. The other question is like, how are capitals of U.S. states selected, or why was the border between Canada and the U.S. picked to be the 45th parallel? Like, why did that make sense? Like, that's not a one fact answer. I want to do some reading, but I also want to look at citations about the reading. So I think as we move away from sort of just like simple answers into more complex stuff, I do think more and more people will be interested in the summaries and the links about more of the summary. So, but I think there is a UX issue there where like a bunch of like early versions of Perplexity, for example, and some of the other search engines didn't really highlight, some of the other AI search engines, did not really highlight the sources that well. And that's not great, right? Because like you really want to be like, hey, I think this, link. I think this, link, summary from these links, and then also have a table of citations at the bottom. Yeah. That's a weird UX, but I think those are the important things.
So just focusing on your position today. So you're the reliability czar, we'll say. No, you probably have a real title. You're a reliability dude at a place.
Yes.
Does quality fall under your purview? Like, do you care about this stuff? And like, if so, like, how do you, like, this is where hallucinations come in. So someone asks, about, the land dispute between these two borders. Like, a hallucination can totally like slip in there. Do we know? Like, do you know? Does like, as you know, wearing your reliability hat at a company that does this stuff, like, is there a way to get a graph to be like, like wasn't great? Someone said this was wrong, or like we think maybe the model was being weird. Like, is this just, does it just happen and we're like, I don't know, tough? Or is there like a way to like make this better over time? Like, how do you come across this type of quality issue? Like, it's up, but it's weird,
I think so it's funny, you stepped into my trap, Steve. Like, I've given a number of public presentations.
I thought you stepped into my trap, but here we are at an impasse.
I've given a number of presentations arguing that end-to-end model quality is the only SLO that people working on reliability for ML systems can have. And I think it's easier, like, hallucination kind of stuff is interesting and some of the subtle cases are interesting, but let's just talk about like a payment fraud system. If the payment fraud system is running and the model is fresh and the model just says, yes, every transaction is fraud, the system is not running. Like, it's not you, like, it's not, you are no longer accepting any payments. It's not an interesting case. You're like, the model just thinks that everything's a fraud. Okay. Is that okay?
Might as well be down.
Right? Might as well be down. Right. And so I think like similarly, like, if you're Amazon and the recommendation systems recommends like a kitty litter robot to everyone, regardless of what they're purchasing, like Amazon's losing tens or hundreds of millions of dollars until they fix that recommendation. Because like, I'm not saying no one would buy, but I don't have a cat, so I'm not buying like a kitty litter robot. Right. And so I think, that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing is, even in the modern systems, one of the most common intersections, or one of the most obvious intersections between model behavior and reliability, is like the trust and safety checking. So you will do, like at Anthropic, we care desperately that the models are safe, that the models are helpful, and that the models don't let you do bad things. Publish this whole responsible scaling policy about like, what we're going to prevent the models from helping people to do. We don't want models to help people, carry out acts of terrorism. We don't want models, right? So for example, like you want a model that understands chemistry and biology, but you don't want a model that helps you make bioweapons that will kill people, right? So that's tough because, some of that's just chemistry and biology. So that's a tough line. So even after you test the models, that nefarious people, sometimes, researchers are trying to get the models to produce harmful content. And there's some live checking that goes on. If that live checking is bad, it can just disable all of the sessions. Be like, nope.
You still want people to be able to make real fertilizer, not fertilizer for bad things. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. For example, like it's completely reasonable for somebody who's got a farm to be like, I'm sick of paying is there anything I can do to not have to pay for this stuff? Yes, but also, yes, there are bad uses for similar chemical compounds. And so I think that's what's interesting is that what I would say is that like there's a tendency for SREs who work on this stuff to be like, model quality is not my problem. I'm like, well, literally the only reason you're running this system is because the model does something. Like if the model didn't do something, you wouldn't be asking it questions in the middle of whatever you're doing, whether it's targeting ads, fixing spelling, correcting grammar, having a conversation, identifying fraud. Like the model does that thing. So given that it does that thing, if it stops doing that thing, then you don't actually have a service anymore. It becomes it's a complex issue though. And I find it interesting because obviously, if I'm running a model, I didn't make the model. But I think there's some good patterns on how to do that. So one of the simplest patterns is if the model's brand new and nobody's ever used it and it's terrible, and like Matt, you launched a bad model, take it back. It's all your fault. I'm not going to help you. If the model's been working fine for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and nobody's touched it, and all of a sudden it's garbage, but so are 5 other models, that's probably my fault, not Matt's fault, right? Like it's probably not all 5 models went bad at once. So you can do some like really simple correlation to try to figure out like, is this an ML problem that is particular to the design of the model, of the, training of the model, or is this some kind of a systems problem?
Yeah. Life is systems, man, for sure.
This makes me think about a core principle, which is a SRE principle of making conscious decisions between product velocity and product reliability. And I want to hear your thoughts on where you see like industry wide on AI product releases coming in terms of reliability versus velocity right now, because these releases are coming hard and fast, and they're coming hard and fast because like the discoveries are coming hard and fast, and the models are coming out really quickly. What's your stance? What are you seeing right now? Where are we in this pendulum between things coming out faster and things coming out better? And what are we to do?
I think it's been an interesting question. What's funny is like that question I dealt with when I was working on the Google Cloud AI team back in like, I don't know, 2022 or 2021 or something. Like this is a long-term question, long-term for our industry.
Ones of years ago. Yes.
Ones of years ago. Yes. But so I think that the right way to reframe this, the way we often do in reliability circles, let's think about the end users and their preferences and just say like, hey, I got a new thing, or I can spend time making the existing thing better. What do you want? And right now the market says, hey, I just want the new thing. I just want the new thing. Mostly. I think there are some cases where that's not the case, but the feedback I've heard from most users is, similarly, you can often trade reliability for capacity as well as you can trade reliability for velocity. You can be like, well, I can run the service hotter, but it's going to break more often. That's another common thing. And most users will be like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take it. Like, I would like twice as much quota at like 1.5 or 2 fewer nines of reliability. I'm like, really? I'm like, right now, a lot of users are saying yes to that. I think that the key question, the same way that cloud was like a toy until it wasn't, like cloud was just kind of a thing people played with and put some stuff in until you turned around and looked and like 20 or 30% of all the like 911 services in the country were running on somebody's cloud. You're like, oh, okay. So not a toy, need to be very thoughtful about how we do this stuff. I think we're going to get to the same thing with the public AI systems, but I still don't think we are. I think users want a better model.
This is, if we're doing this really quick, because this is what the market is asking for, and this is what we can deliver. And like, okay, sure, market, you say so. What if we're wrong? Like, what's the backup plan? Like, what if it goes too fast? The worry that I have, and this is pretty philosophical, is that like this is a highly leverageable technology, right? Like we can get it to the hands of literally billions of people, and if it's goofy or weird or wrong, like it can have drastic effects real fast, and it can have like a lot of them potentially, especially in the not this year but next several years mode. Presuming that we're right about that. Are there thoughts about that you're aware of within the industry, within things that you work on in terms of like how do we if it's bad, what do we do? Like is there a roll it back big red button? In the meta sense, I guess.
I mean, I think when Matt was talking about this, I was thinking about reliability and the model's fine, but it's not working right. Like the inferences are not returning. I think in terms of launching new models, one of the things that like Anthropic is particularly opinionated about is being very careful and thoughtful of that. So, we have this, I think it's a great framework, this responsible scaling policy. And the responsible scaling policy just says, if you have a model that can do these things, then you need security controls that can do these things. It's very explicit. And before I started at Anthropic, I thought like, this is the kind of thing that security orgs do to market themselves. When I got to Anthropic, I asked like Jason Clinton, who is the chief information security officer, I was like, hey, how does security work here? He's like, well, I mean, we describe it publicly in the responsible scaling policy. That's just what we do. Every time we have a model, we decide how capable the model is, and then we implement the controls that are of that capability. And so that's what we have now. And we're trying to encourage other organizations to do similar sorts of thinking, because I think you're right. Like, there's the ways that humans use these things are many and varied. It's exciting. It's wonderful. But the potential for harm is pretty significant as well, right? And that can be from, I don't know if you all have read all these stories and talked to friends who are like, oh, yeah, like I use ChatGPT as a therapist. Really?
Yeah.
The models they're not suited to that. Not that they couldn't be. I can imagine a model being a fantastic therapist, but I'm not aware of any data that says that we have models that are good at that and safe to do that right now. Because that's tricky. So yeah, what I would say is like, yeah, everyone, like Anthropic is super careful about model releases for these reasons, and we're hoping to sort of like pressure the rest of the industry into being careful about it as well.
In my experience, and I think yours, because we worked together at the same place for a long time, like SRE historically, or at least, yeah, I would say SRE in general, like has kind of been at this weird intersection where we're like, the fight for the user group, where we would say like, no, we shouldn't do the thing, right? Like, even though, some team was like, well, this feature is going to be great. Like we would hold this sign saying like, no, it's actually not good. Do you think that SRE in, the future, the current, is in a similar position to be able to say like, yeah, but not cool. Like this isn't going to work for the following reasons, or is it like, are we still in that position where we're looking at like the holistic picture, where maybe other people at the company are not, and is this a bad idea, or is this like actually like an honorable thing to try to do at these types of companies?
I mean, and like the origin behind that, was always going back to like early days sysadmins who are like, I have access to all the secret data and I take that responsibility super seriously. Like a lot of sysadmins I know are as ethical as the physicians I know about private data. Like, of course I know what you do in your computer. And of course I would never let anybody know that without appropriate permission, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the difference here is that the worrisome capabilities are much more subtle. They're not like, I'm going to expose your credit card information online, or I'm going to, give somebody access to your bank account. I'm going to launch a model that is weird and dangerous for a very small subset of people under this very odd circumstance. And so I guess where I'm getting to is like, one of the things I really like about, my current employer is that the whole company is organized around trying to prevent this. And I think it needs that, because you need sophisticated researchers, you need a trust and safety team that are understanding those, you need red teaming, you need people publishing about that stuff. There was one of my coworkers who until recently was here in Pittsburgh, did a whole, paper of like, hey, I used one of our models to do like end-to-end network penetration. I just, it worked. And so I figured out how it worked, and I wanted to publish. It was really easy and easy to do on everybody else's models too. And I was like, can you publish that? He's like, yeah, it was so easy. I'm sure other people are already doing it. Like, we publish it so that people can see how this is done, so that we can, right? So, but this is my point, is like, you're not going to, like, that took a PhD researcher 4 weeks, which is a small amount of time, but also not something an SRE is going to do on a Tuesday before their call shift starts at noon. So it takes more work.
Tell us a story, an anecdote, something that really surprised you, like something either adjacent or outside your field since changing companies. You meet new people, new scenarios, something you've learned since changing that really took you by surprise.
I will say, here, speaking directly to us as the audience and what I believe is your audience, most of us, we're pretty skeptical about these technologies. We're like, they're okay. They fail a lot. I don't know. I don't really trust them. I'm not sure. Also, AI is just a bubble. Also, these are just glorified zip. Like, it's just some glorified compression. LLMs are not. I'm like, okay, I think those are widely held beliefs. And when I was at OpenAI, it was difficult to disprove those, because OpenAI is such a consumer-oriented company. Consumers are very susceptible. We love us a fad, right? Like, we just love whatever other people are doing, especially like Nerdland, where like, if 3 other technical people are doing a thing, I just have to do that thing.
I'll take 2. Yeah.
Take 2, right? Then I came to my current employer, who really sells mostly to businesses. And it's not that businesses are not susceptible to fads, but all of them are doing proofs of concept, that's better. And they're buying a lot. And so I think what surprised me is how much of a real market for these services there is, and how diverse it is. Like, clearly, the coding use case has caught wildfire. People love this for coding. It's very concrete. It's super economically valuable. The price points are right. Like, it's going to change our whole industry. And like, we can all already see it. That one has appeared basically out of nowhere in the last 2 years, where, when GitHub launched Copilot, I think a lot of us were like, cute story, but it's not that useful, in part because the models weren't quite good enough yet. Like, it was a good UI, but the models weren't good enough. But now, like, Steve, you're vibe coding and it's kind of working. That's wild. But also for marketing. And also, like for marketing, like product marketing, someone was describing to me how one of their products is somebody writes a strategic product brief and like out comes the marketing segmentation plan, the advertising plan, the manufacturing plan, what ingredients they should or should not use, proposed names, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, well, what is that? Is that good? And they're like, yeah, we have currently between 112 and 120 people doing that to each product. And if you can do that, like those people could go do something else. Like, and it doesn't do it all by itself. But anyway, my point is like the thing that I have seen that has surprised me the most is both the volume, the intensity, and the diversity of real economically valuable use cases that already exist in these models that are far from where they're going to be in the near future. So that stuff.
Nice.
I think the reasoning stuff, that the little sub point, the reasoning technology that has appeared recently is fascinating. I don't know if you like, if either of you watched Claude Plays Pokemon, that is mesmerizing. No. It is mesmerizing. So basically, like, they just turn Claude with reasoning turned on at Pokemon and they say go. And it gives it an interface. And so it can parse the screen and be like, what do I see? I think I'm in a room. What can I do? Are there any buttons I can press? I will press this button. That didn't do anything. Should I press another button? It's wild. And you're like, what is happening here? And they can chart how far each model has ever gotten playing Pokemon. But it sort of shows you this like naive potential of what agents, like this is a very primitive environment. It's a very constrained environment. It's old school Pokemon. But it shows you the potential of what agents might be able to do. So I would love to have an agent, to be able to like have an AI agent and say, hey, book us a vacation next spring. And just like have it know who we, us, vacation, spring, note what those things mean, and come back to like either no clarifying questions or a couple and like, hey, I got you and your kids and your partner, plane tickets, hotel, activities booked. Like, I actually replaced your luggage because I know that you've broken it down over the last 15 years and you need a new roller bag. So I got that on the way and like, you're good to go. And be like, wow, you can imagine that. We're not there yet, but I don't know how far off we are from that. And so that's going to be exciting as well.
I hate to be bad cop here, Todd, but there's quite a lot of hope in your voice. And I recall hope being a phrase in SRE land, something we're not supposed to do
it's
too
weird.
much.
Here's the nice, one of the things. So people who think a lot about AI harms are some of the people who are most optimistic about AI benefits. And like the analogy I'll give you is homeopathy. No one worries that a homeopathic medicine will cause you harm because it doesn't do anything. And since it doesn't do anything, it can't hurt you. It's just water, right?
Just go for it.
Just go for it. You can overdose on water, but it's got to be like many, many liters, right?
Right.
With the AI, it's the same thing. Like if you think these things are incapable and aren't getting much better very quickly, then you don't need to worry about the harms because they're not any good. And so that's one camp of people. There's another camp of people who are concerned about the human transition to these technologies, what the machines are capable, what some of the harms might be during that transition and after. But those are the people who are seeing the improvement curves and saying like, it's hard in the ever and present now for us to take this seriously, but cast your mind back 18 months ago. Like what could the models do? Cast your mind back 36 months ago. What could the models do? What do the models do today? Like even if you just look at like, you know, the model launches that were in October of last year and like the Gemini 2.5 and the Sonnet 3.7 launches, and you only think about coding. You're like, you know what writes really good code is Sonnet 3.7, and what writes really good code as of last week is the new Gemini launch. Those write really good code, and they didn't 4 months ago. So I don't know what happens in 4 more months, and I don't know what happens in 12 more months, but like there has been no plateau to the improvement. And therefore, I think, A, it's appropriate to be optimistic because you're looking at a curve and you're seeing where it goes. But then B, it's also appropriate to be thoughtful and cautious and say, okay, what are we going to do to make sure that this doesn't hurt people, this doesn't hurt societies, it doesn't hurt economies, it doesn't hurt the world?
Right.
All right, I got a hard-hitting one for you, Todd.
All right.
Some of our audience is listening and some are also watching. some of those who are watching only see the top of your shirt. Explain your shirt. Describe it out loud, and then describe the whole thing. What
Yeah,
does it
so the
say?
shirt has like two goofy SRE logos, a dragon and a unicorn. The dragon is the original Google SRE logo, and the unicorn is the SRE EDU. How do you say it? Like not
Mascot.
Mascot. Thank you. I was like, mascota means pet, but we don't call it anyway. I got stuck in the middle there. So the shirt says "traitor and a scoundrel," and it's got a box of filled in like what kind of SRE are you a traitor and a scoundrel to? And I am a traitor to MLSRE as of 2023. So
What had happened there? Why
that's when I left. And I think like when people would leave my teams when I was a manager at Google, I would always call them a traitor and a scoundrel because I loved that people would go do stuff. Like I thought it was great. Like and also like in any good technical environment, people go try stuff, and then like if they think your team is great, then they come back to something else maybe for a different reason. And that's healthy and that's good. And so sort of joking around with people. And then I worked with Sky Wilson and like we had the shirts made up. She designed it and like just actually started giving them to people writing in like I'm a traitor to Pittsburgh. I have one that says ML SRE because I founded machine learning SRE at Google. I have one that says Pittsburgh SRE because I used to be the Pitt SRE site lead and ultimately the Pitt site lead. So yeah, I really enjoy those. And I think it's a nice marker of like where you've been.
Yeah. I have another hard-hitting question, Todd. Now is your opportunity. Just this is a, you could do this if you want. Okay. Would you like to be like Niall and tear up your own book live on camera?
No.
But if you were to write another book magically, it just happened. How would you like change what you guys wrote about? Like, what would be like radically different? Like, what are the diffs? What's the addendum that you would like to exist without actually doing the work of making it exist?
What do they call this? A fast follow, or maybe just an errata?
Yeah,
that one.
I think that the whole like your experience with vibe coding, Steve, sort of is where a lot of us are, and I think that getting the timing would be difficult. But what I would probably do is start. No, but don't let me talk myself into that. If anybody's
this
listening,
was not a trick. You're tricking yourself here. This is not
anyone
me.
is listening from O'Reilly. I am not writing another book. But if I were to, I would spend this next like 6 to 12 months watching that transition and trying to plot out what is our work like in a year to 5 years, which is hard to do. But I would say like, what are the like domains of expertise? How does like testing and rollout work? Like think about rollout. Like most places don't have something like a canary analysis server or something that but most people have like primitive smoke tests. But what you really want is to ask a model like, I rolled out a thing. Does it work? Is it good? Like it'd be amazing to be able to say have some sense of what work and good mean. I think there's going to be a bunch of stuff like that. And so what I'd like to do is try to help understand what is going to be the technical work that we will have in the future where instead of doing all of this, we direct the work of all of this. In the same way, like it used to be like you wrote code by hand with your fingers in an Emacs or VI window like God intended. And now you just say like, hey, could you unroll this loop? Now you know what unroll and what loop means. But like you don't have to unroll the loop. It just unrolls the loop for you, or it makes the UI for you and it plumbs them into your methods, right? So I think like that's what I would try to do is I would try to say like, what is it like to do technical work in a world where the execution becomes less and less important, but the architecture and the purpose and the design are still important? Because I think that's where we'll be for a while. Now, eventually we will be past that, but I just don't know how quickly that. So that would be the book. It would be like, how do you direct the technical execution of a production engineering environment whose execution is managed by computers?
Well, thank you, Todd. That was awesome. Thank you for your time. Yes. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we didn't hit? Like, did you have a big gotcha that you wanted to just drop on the world?
You guys are covering great stuff. It's fascinating. One thing I will recommend people go look at the closing keynote of SRECon, which should be out on video by the time you guys launch this, because it's Charity Majors, Honeycomb, who has been notably like AI cranky AI skeptic who is now AI bargaining. So sort of interesting
process.
transition there.
Yeah.
We should include those in the show notes.
Good.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. It's been great. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Until next time.
Bye.